Hello there, and welcome to Fairyland Cottage, and thanks very much for joining me here today. How are you all? Spring is out, the sun is shining, and the little fairy is napping. So I thought today we could focus on an area that I know household bills, especially heating and electricity, have increased monumentally for most of us around the world. So I thought we could just focus on ways that we're being a little bit wasteful and ways that we could be a little bit more mindful of how energy is just disappearing out of the home. Because sometimes I wonder, where is it all going and what am I using? So let's start with the first one. Now, we all have some form of heating. We have a log burning stove. Not everybody can just go out and buy one. If you have whatever heating you do have, one of the biggest things about heating a home is most of the heat is actually disappearing out the windows and the doors and the cracks. Now, we don't all have the budget to just go out and buy really fancy quadruple glazed windows and brand new doors. There's some really simple tips that you can do that are really inexpensive. And one of the main ones we do is the door draft. It sounds so incredibly simple. I know I have a video, I'll leave a link of actually making a door draft, but it's not rocket science. It's literally something that excludes the heat from going out the door. And you would be amazed of when you take a door draft away, actually how cold it feels. The second one I have in relation to allowing heat to stay in the home is thermal curtains. They're incredibly inexpensive, and especially if you can't afford or have the budget for very thick glazed windows, you would be amazed how much heat thermal curtains will keep into the house. So that's two very simple ways to just keep heat in. Another one, of course, is if you have a house with a lot of different rooms, is keeping the room doors closed. That's a real practical one. Did anyone have where they were younger and they had their father, for me it was my grandfather, always roaring, "Close the doors, close the doors." Because I'd be leaving the doors open and of course all the heat is escaping. In our house, we have a very small house, so actually we have to leave the doors open because our whole heating system is on the log burning stove. So of course we want the heat to go through into every room. So for us, it's the opposite. We want to keep the doors open and allow the heat to circulate. Different for everyone. Let me know how it is for you in the comments below, and if you did have an upbringing where you had to make sure you were keeping the doors closed all the time. The next one, similar to keeping doors closed, my grandfather was a stickler for making sure you turn off the lights. It's such a simple one. We all know by now that LEDs are a lot more energy efficient, and so we've been gradually changing them out in our home over the years. But a big thing is just turning the lights off. Sometimes we can go past a house and my grandfather used to say it looks like Butlins or Blackpool. And if you don't know, that's a place in England that has everything lit up like magical, like Christmas. Simple things like that, just turning lights off. And another one is actually to do with lighting or turning things off is plugs. So in our house, we've got the switch beside the plug that you can actually just turn it off. Or you can actually just take plugs out of the walls. It's amazing how much energy is just used by things on standby. And that also brings into other equipment on standby. So say computers on standby, televisions on standby. Just be amazed at how much can be wasted. So turning things off is fantastic, especially if you're only using, say, your toaster once a day and then it's just sitting there on standby for the rest. The next little one that I find really beneficial in our home is we can heat water up on the stove, but I know if you don't have a stove, you can't do that. So if you have a gas cooker, supposedly it's cheaper to actually boil the water up on your gas cooker rather than boiling the kettle like an electric kettle. So that's one really simple one, and I know of a few people who actually have changed to doing that. But if you even have your electric kettle and you're boiling your water, just put that water into a water flask. It's a really simple one. We do this one every single day, and then we use that water during the day for our teas. or maybe about 6 hours, but it's still much better than constantly reboiling the kettle over and over and just wasting electricity. One of the things I found, especially heat in the home, since having a child, is I'm spending much more time outside. When I come back into the home, I'm lovely and warm, my circulation is fantastic, the blood is flowing through the body, and I just feel much warmer, so I'm not looking for the heat that high. So really spending more time outdoors, I found, has actually made me want the heating, I suppose, less. Another one in relation to heating is actually having a thermostat. Now, this is something we started having a few years ago because we have a really old house. So we need to check the humidity because it can get really damp and it does need to be warmed up nice and slowly. But we are able to check just on the thermostat that if it's a nice warm day, we might not need any log fire early in the day. It's just these little tiny things that can just help wasting the heating and just putting it on because it's winter, when you don't really actually need it for the entire day and night. The next one I have is just a simple one. It's about the washing machine. We waste so much electricity actually heating up the water. So a short wash and a cold wash is all you need for most clothes. Of course, if you have to sanitize, then you do what you need to do. But for the majority of everyday clothes, you really don't need a long wash nor a hot wash. And if you have a nice eco detergent, it will still work and clean your clothes perfectly fine in our house anyway. Let me know if you have a washboard. Now, I know this takes much more time, but I remember when I was little, that beautiful washboard. If I only had it now today, and in the summertime, if I had a washboard, I could be doing a few of the clothes outside on a sunny day. I think the whole idea with being mindful of the waste that we're using is also appreciating what we have. Not everybody had washing machines. Not everybody even does have a washing machine. So for me, saving waste is really about being mindful of actually what I have and how could I do it in a more simpler way. So I know in Ireland, it's not really that common to have tumble dryers, but I have heard in America, it's very common to have a tumble dryer. So again, you don't need the tumble dryer for absolutely everything. You can use a washing line, especially if you're in an area where you've got loads of wind or sun. And then you just use your tumble dryer for, say, doing sheets or things that just need it. But it's all about, well, what could I just change? And of course, with change comes where you're just changing habits, and it all takes time, so not to be too hard on ourselves. Another simple one I only actually learned recently, you probably all know this one, about the fridge and the freezer, is apart from holding the door open for ages while you're trying to decide what to take out, uses electricity, is just to have the fridge and the freezer quite full. I didn't know that it actually has to work harder when the fridge is nearly empty. So it's a really good reason to have a full fridge and a full freezer. And some people even had the tip that if you need to just kind of fill empty bags with either water or just anything that is suitable for a freezer. And the other thing, of course, is if your freezer needs to be defrosted, to be doing that because it needs far more electricity if your freezer is not in great condition. Another one I have, and this is actually more to do with the heating, but it's dressing for the weather. So we've invested in some really good quality thermal socks, thermal tops, and it's made a huge difference. You don't always need to have the heating on straight away. Like I said, being outside, you get yourself really warm, but if you're indoors, just wearing the right clothes can make a huge difference and save you on a ton of heating bills. Another little simple tip, you don't have to hoover all the time. There's nothing wrong with using a dustpan and brush. My grandparents did it all the time, and especially now I've got a lot of food falling, our little fairies. Quite a messy eater. So just sweeping up little bits of dust, using it on the rug as well, is completely beneficial. And, sometimes hoovering can be a bit backbreaking, so you're saving yourself on that as well. The next one, which is just a simple one, is if you have an electric shower, having shorter showers. I know it sounds crazy, but every time you're standing under the shower and it's electric, we're using electricity. So at the moment we've changed, we don't have the electric shower anymore, but when we're heating up the water, I have to be more mindful to just turn off the switch. I don't need to have the water on for that long. So kind of knowing what you need. I need to heat up the water to wash the dishes. So doing my best to be more mindful of I only need it on for a couple of minutes and it will give me enough water to be able to just clean the dishes. And last but not least, for me, this one is you can do with the family, and it makes me more aware and more grateful for everything that I have, is having an evening where you just have electricity free. So no devices, no TV, no iPads, iPhones. You're just having maybe some candles, or you're keeping it really simple. As the evenings are getting longer now, it's a lot easier to do. And it just, number one, it makes me far more creative of what I can do that doesn't involve electricity. And I also think it's a great way for kids as well to just be getting more mindful of where we're using electricity. Because at the end of the day, simple living and so forth, it's about really being grateful for what you have and just trying to live as simply as possible in the means that you have. What I found when I went online looking for tips to save on household bills, a lot of it was to do with spending an enormous amount of money on, say, extra insulation or fancy windows and so forth. Brand new appliances. Not everybody is in that situation where they can do that. So I love kind of the tips that just keep it a bit simpler and make me more aware of where I'm just wasting energy. Left, right, and centre, as they say in Ireland. So thank you very much for watching. I'd love to know your tips below. Really simple ones. What did your grandparents do back in the day before? I feel we've become so complacent in relation to heating or electricity or gas. And it's just about bringing it all in and just getting a little bit more mindful. So I hope the tips have helped you. And let's chat in the comments as always or over on Instagram. It's been lovely chatting to you today. Happy spring, and I'll see you in the next video.